What is good, Josh Johnson's Full Game, man? And boy, are we back with some more heat. Back after another crazy postseason weekend. The Commanders shocked the world and beat the #1 seed Detroit Lions, but many people had as this is being their year to win it all. They're out. Baltimore. Many people had, if you didn't have Detroit winning, I feel like everybody else had Baltimore winning. They're out. It's just crazy to see. That's not even really an upset because Buffalo had the higher seed, so they're technically supposed to win. But just seeing Baltimore and Detroit both get knocked out, I mean, shoot, that was my Super Bowl prediction. So crazy wild weekend. Of course, the Chiefs go to get their game done, and the Eagles win like they were supposed to. So those games were kind of right on schedule. But two wild games there throughout the day. A shootout and a close one, which I know Ravens fans, y'all probably mad at Mark Andrews. Mark Andrews probably mad at Mark Andrews, and shoot, even me picking him, I'm mad at Mark Andrews a little bit. But you can't just blame it on one play, although it's a significant play. Hopefully they can run it back again next year, keep looking stronger. Lamar can finally get that ring that he promised the fans on draft night. But like, comment, subscribe, you guys way into the video, man, as we go and get to another week of power rankings, man. This is the conference championship week, so we're probably majorly going to talk about the four that moved on. I'm not sure how they're going to structure it this time around, but now that we've got it moved on here, next round predictions, Chiefs and Bills. I can't pick against Patrick Mahomes, if I'm being honest with you. I think he does extend that to 4-0 against the Bills. And then on the other side, I honestly don't know. My heart wants me to go with Jaden. I just don't know if they can hold Philadelphia and Saquon as much as he's been running. But let's not forget they did beat them, albeit on a last-minute score in the regular season. This is postseason time. It's going to be in Philadelphia again. Philadelphia, KC. I think I'm going to roll with that. Philadelphia, KC this time around. Let me know down below what you guys are rocking with, who you guys think is winning. If Jaden wins it, I'm going to put it out right now. I'm getting a Jaden Daniels jersey, and I'm wearing that thing in every football video I do from now to next season when the Saints go ahead and get back to winning. So let's go and jump into this video, though, and get into this heat.
But break it down for me, man. Like the Chiefs, they just figure out ways. Like you could have made a compelling.
And, of course, the top four got to be the teams that moved on. I'm going to try to pause more throughout this because I doubt we're going to be talking about really any more than these top 8, honestly. So here's the top 4: Chiefs, Bills, Commanders, Eagles. As they've moved on, they actually have the Commanders better than the Eagles right now. So if we went by what this rankings is telling us, we would see a Chiefs-Commanders Super Bowl, which if the Commanders beat Philadelphia, I'm picking the Commanders in the Super Bowl, yes, and I will be okay with that loss. If the Commanders win this week, we're rolling Commanders ride or die.
Argument that this was the squad, the way the Houston Texans played, that they should have won this football game. But right now, your top 4 teams, Kansas City, Buffalo, Washington, and Philadelphia. It all makes sense to me. Should make sense to everyone else. But
I thought Philadelphia would be over Commanders, but they do make sense.
This Kansas City squad based off of a little bit of a layoff and surviving and advancing.
Let's get it. Let's see.
Yeah, right. I think you do have to factor in that layoff too. I mean, obviously a long time off, great for the body, great for the mind and soul and all that. But also when you get back into action, it takes a little while to get those gears grinding. But still, yeah, I remember somebody saying of a great quarterback, I think it was Tom Brady. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I think it was Tom Brady.
They're not playing football anymore. They're just figuring out how to win games, right? And that applies to Andy Reid or Bill Belichick or any of the great coaches too. But I really think Reid and Mahomes did that on Saturday. I think you're going to see them try to do that on Sunday against the Bills too. They've gotten so good at their craft. Maybe it doesn't reflect on the scoreboard, but this is a team that oftentimes is in complete control, even when they're outgained by 124 yards and almost 100 yards on the ground.
It was that bad?
Doesn't turn the ball over, and you still find a way to win. Look,
I didn't know they got outgained that much.
Skill that doesn't always exist in the NFL, and you think about the defense stepping up early, stepping up late, special teams, 3 made field goals and a blocked kick as well. Just enough offensively. Look, it's a pretty good formula, all things considered, even if it isn't the flashiest thing in the world.
Yeah, I've used this analogy on a couple.
And I think we got to just give credit to what's credit's due, too. Washington did a good job in that game. I mean, it was close pretty much to the end. I mean, one-score game. They were up 20-12, throughout much of that fourth quarter. And there were a couple chances that they had to go get it done. And I don't think that we're through seeing Houston in the postseason trying to make waves. Of course, there are other AFC teams on the come-up, but Houston gets healthy, gets maybe a couple more, like 1 or 2 solid people on that offensive line, they can be right up there in these mentions.
Shows, and I'll throw it your way. I don't know how much of a tennis guy you are, but there's some players that have like these huge serves, huge forehands, huge backhands, and then you got another group of players who just don't make mistakes, and they're going to wait for you to go and make your mistake I think Kansas City's got that vibe in them. But when you get to a championship weekend, when you get to a Super Bowl, is that a recipe for success? Like what? Like
it definitely can be.
Keep it close and let 15 do his deal.
It's work.
Yeah, on the one hand, like you got to remember your Top Gun, right? I mean, Maverick ends up being the hero in the end, but Iceman was the guy who typically got it done. He was in that sort of pole position and he wore people down, right? So I guess we're sort of saying that the Chiefs, everyone sort of views them as the enemy now. They've had all this success. They are Iceman. They're the guys who just kind of wait for you to make that fatal mistake and they pounce on it. So we'll see. I don't know if the Bills are quite Maverick anymore, though. We'll have to address that subject and figure that one out too.
Not Top Gun references though.
Smart.
I haven't seen the movie. I'm not gonna lie to you.
Get where they're at.
I love where you just went with that. No one a bigger Top Gun fan than me, and I'm not talking about Maverick the remake.
Right.
I feel like it's bad for me to say this. I think there's an argument Maverick was better than the original. I don't know if I would go on record to say that, but there's at least
you already on record. You on YouTube.
You kind of just did, Mike.
I
just
know.
saying.
It's just wild. It was so good. I'd been waiting 20 some odd years for that movie to come out here. And we finally got it, and it delivered. What's the story, though? What's the story for this Kansas City team? In your mind, looking ahead, is this a Super Bowl winning team?
I think they have all the elements. Again, it's not going to be the fireworks show that we often saw in the past, but they've evolved. You know, they understand that they're going to get everybody's best shot, and they know that they can win those close, tight games because they've been in so many of them. They've been in these playoff settings. That's why they're have such a good record, 16-3, I think, under Mahomes in the divisional round. So, you know, that obviously lends to their big game preparation. You know, their kind of focus and equanimity in those situations. And you know, right now, I think you'd say the Bills are the team they're trying to prove they have that and that they can match what the Kansas City Chiefs bring seemingly every playoff game they go out there.
Yeah, they got to show it this time.
Buffalo, your number 2 squad. I will be honest with you, I've won on a bunch of our shows that I've done, and I had Baltimore, and I said Baltimore would be my pick to win the Super Bowl heading into last week. I thought they were the most complete team.
There's a lot of year.
And speaking of waiting for your opponent to make mistakes, Baltimore made plenty of mistakes in that game, and that's the reason why we're talking about this Bills team surviving and advancing. How impressed were you, though, with the win that Buffalo had? And I know it's a home game, but I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I felt like you were vibing with me a little bit, and you like the Ravens in this matchup heading into the weekend.
And I'll go ahead and put my opinions up there. I didn't like the win that much. Even though they got it done, like I said, it was a Mark Andrews mistake on a 2-point conversion that kept them from going to OT and possibly losing the game. It took Baltimore mistakes for them not to win the game. Kansas City, yes, you can't even really say they did it off of mistakes. Like they said, Houston had 0 turnovers. Bad offensive line, they got to the quarterback a lot, but weren't really, turning the ball over like that. And I don't think that there was any kind of huge mistakes. Because, turnovers are going to happen. You can't really count on them not to. When they don't happen, you're thankful. But you can't count on them not to. So, I think we do put a bigger spotlight on the Mark Andrews mistake because we didn't see a mistake like that with Houston where they had a chance to win the game or tie the game and somebody just dropped the ball or fumbled or CJ threw an interception or the defense gave up a long touchdown. We didn't see something like that happen late, so I would put Kansas City win above Buffalo's. And if we run it back, Baltimore probably gets the win, 7 out of 10 times. If we run that back 10 more times.
Yeah, I definitely thought the Ravens had a great chance to win, and they obviously did the way it played out, even with the turnovers, even with the missed 2-point conversions. So, I don't know that this Buffalo win, you put it up in the all-time annals for its beauty and its level of dominance or anything like that. But, again, we kind of go back to what we said with the Chiefs, which is when your opponents make mistakes, you have to capitalize. They didn't on the interception, interestingly. They didn't on the first possession of the second half, and they settled for the field goal kind of on the doorstep of the end zone there. It was a really interesting call from Sean McDermott. I wrote after the game, I thought maybe this was a mistake, even though it worked out, right? Process over results and all that. So I don't know. I think they did what they had to do. I think there is some concern about that Buffalo defense, but they can play heavy and play tough in the run game. They can control the clock. They'll go big personnel. They obviously saw what the Texans did running the football, and I think we'll try to mirror some of that in the game Sunday. But it really does boil down to what Josh Allen could do in those key moments. Will they loosen the belt a little bit and get more aggressive and let him kind of create and throw more vertically, too? We didn't really see much of it after that first drive.
Yeah, do you think a lot of that had to do with weather conditions? Because I'm with you. I thought we'd see some more explosive in this game.
I got to say, too, I realized that my thing, I guess I changed the settings somehow on here without realizing it. So if it's extra loud from my audio, that's my fault. I might have had the gain up here too loud and like it was picking up a bunch of extra background stuff. So hopefully that don't take away from the experience. But I just fixed it. So hopefully it sounds a lot better.
Weather conditions, obviously the way Baltimore's cover him, you never want to sort of put the ball near Kyle Hamilton anytime, he's sort of roaming a little bit. But yeah, also that's the fact the Bills don't have quite the explosive weapons we're used to. Some of the stuff is schemed up. Some of it is a response to what the Bills can do in the run game. So yeah, a lot of factors that I'll be interested to see if the game plan changes at all or if the game script is any different against the Chiefs.
Yeah, you've had a close eye on this Bills team the last couple of years. I look at this roster and I look at where they are right now. Do you see this team as maybe this the best chance to beat this Kansas City squad? And I will say maybe less about what Buffalo is, because I think some of these rosters in previous years might have been better than this one. But from a team perspective, like they're winning games and this team might be better. But in conjunction with Kansas City, maybe looking like there's like this much room for them to lose a game?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an interesting point. You might argue that the 13 seconds team had a better shot given the odds of trying to win that one a couple years ago. Didn't work out, as we know. But to your point, they're so balanced and they can win in different ways. Even the defense can kind of take on different forms. But, we saw Sunday that, look, it doesn't have to be about Josh Allen airing it out and making all those crazy plays. And we talked about a minute ago that goal line possession where, the play before the decision to kick the field goal, Josh kind of turned around and almost looked like, hey, I'm going to toss it back to Cook and maybe make a crazy play. Yeah. Everyone in their mind saying, don't do it, right? And I think the old Josh might have, but they don't kill themselves with turnovers. They don't kill themselves with sacks. And they have a defense that can take the football away from you. So from that perspective, that formula, and we've seen how much time of possession and turnover battle means in the playoffs so far. Yeah, that could say a lot on Sunday.
As you see the trajectory of the Commanders
they brought in the beat, bro. I had to start getting jiggy with it. But look at this ranking. It started at 29, 5, 11. Is that 6? No, it's 8, and then 3.
In week number 2, you had them as the 29th ranked team. There was a steady rise, though. They were 7-2 in week number 9. They had won 3 straight games. You had them up to 5. Then it was 11 in week 13. In week 18, they'd fallen back a little bit into that 8th position. And then here we are. They are the 3rd ranked team in the land. It is time for Power Moves, and it is presented by Energize. Where do we begin here? Is it as simple as just going, dude, they got Jaden Daniels. Moment doesn't seem too big for them. I can't get over that they beat the Lions. And by the way, not just win,
in the shootout.
Win the way that they did. I mean, it was essentially in all phases of the game.
Absolutely. From that first stop on defense, right? The 3 and out to start the game, and then obviously coming down and starting what became an offensive flourish. I think you saw a team with no panic, a team that by that point had expected to be there and thought, let's outline the Lions, right? Let's take their game to them, play action pass, Daniels evading pressure, and also defensively, getting after Jared Goff the way they did and obviously forcing him into some bad decisions too was great. But it really obviously does start with what they do offensively. Multiple receivers who can help you out, a valued tight end and Zach Ertz. The offensive line, even without Samuel Cosme, they suffered a torn ACL in that game. That's going to be a big loss, but they're very multiple on offense. Cliff Kingsbury has designed this thing beautifully to parlay to the strengths of Daniels. And, the defense, while shorthanded at times and with holes that we can obviously point to, I say they're doing a darn good job for what they have right now.
And that's what you can do when you got turnovers. You're getting high-scoring games. But, I mean, let's not act like they just did this, on a low end. So, I mean, the defense does have some concerns, but they show they can ball out and score, too, and get a couple turnovers to help close that gap of what the defense can do. So, against a Philly team that relies a little bit more on the run than the pass, we'll have to see if they can get that same level of turnover or just be able to score and keep pace with the Eagles.
This was actually possible. Maybe you didn't, but was there a point this season where you said, yeah, playing in an NFC championship game, Washington, I buy it?
I don't know that I thought it then, but I remember watching the comebacks early in the season and watching them seemingly in control in these games, whether it was the Bengals game or the Bears game or several others along the way. I thought Dan Quinn has these guys believing. Adam Peters went out and got a ton of hungry veterans and young players who had yet to kind of be able to prove themselves. And I think they've all fit in really nicely. And again, there are some positions and spots on the roster where you say, okay, it's kind of taped together a little bit, some stuff to work on in the offseason. But at the same time, when you have a quarterback playing with this kind of confidence and you have an offensive coordinator, fully locked in with his guy as well, and a coach who is just as aggressive as the Lions and anybody else out there, and the success rate is incredibly high. You just saw it grow as the season went on. Again, the NFC was shaky enough for me to think, even with 15-win teams like the Lions and the Vikings having great regular seasons, they had enough shakiness to them to make me think that a wild card team like the Bucs or the Commanders could come along and kind of spoil the party a little bit.
Yeah, I'm a fool because I actually thought the Bucs were going to win that matchup between those teams.
Almost did.
What do I know? They will match up, the Commanders, that is, against the Philadelphia Eagles, who do move up a spot. They sit fourth in the rankings right now. I know concerns about Jalen Hurts, injury. This is a tough game. Rams had an opportunity late. I thought the Rams, actually, I had them picked on Sunday on Game Day Preview. I had picked the Rams, so once again, clearly don't know what I'm talking about here. But make the case from a Philadelphia perspective that they will handle.
I had suspicions that they could possibly pull off an upset. I don't think I would have picked that on live TV or put money on it, though.
Yeah, I think the Hurts concern is real, but at the same time, it sounds like they're preparing for him to start on Sunday, and I think it would take a lot or another injury in the game to knock him out. So I do expect him out there. Quinyon Mitchell, obviously, his shoulder, we got to see what shape he's in, but sounds like he might be on the track towards playing too. So that's two elements of good news. They beat the Commanders in Philadelphia. Granted, I think this Commanders team has come a long way since then and kind of learned a lot about themselves. And they obviously beat the Eagles in Washington, so they split the two games. This one's in Philly. You'd like to think that the home team has a little edge there. Maybe the snow comes back, the cold weather stays, and they gain some kind of advantage from that. But I think it really has to do with, it's got to start with Jalen Carter in that front. Nolan Smith, too, has kind of come on. Zach Bonds had a great season. All these guys creating pressure from different angles. And I think avoiding sacks on the other side. Jalen Hurts has been guilty of taking sacks, not always the offensive line's fault. So we've got to see that number come down and the pressure for the Eagles come up. Yes, Saquon Barkley can rescue you from some bad situations as he did Sunday, but you'd like to not have to rely on him to sort of sit around and wait. When is Saquon going to save us here? So finding other sources of offense, including A.J. Brown, where he made a big catch Sunday on fourth down, but he's got to be more involved in the game plan. The chemistry with Hurts has got to be better.
Yeah, there is a plethora of options there. It's been a steady dose of Saquon. Here's what concerns me from the Washington defensive perspective. The Rams looked like a better defense coming off of the loss that they had in Week 12 against Philadelphia. They knew the game plan, right? Like, they let Saquon go for 300 scrimmage yards in that first meeting. He ran for 255. You got to stop him. He ran for 205 in this game. I mean, if that doesn't tell you how talented Saquon is, knowing that he was going to be the defensive game plan and he still balled out, I don't know. I mean, that's the reason why I'm like, if Jalen's still hurt, like, all right, good luck. Still try to stop this dude.
But we ain't going to act like other teams they did it, and the Commanders being one of them, though. I mean, they do have a dub against Philly.
He is going to be the X factor, no doubt about it. I mean, obviously, there's no way to ignore it. He's been an amazing upgrade for them in the backfield, a perfect fit for what they want to do offensively. Can run inside, outside, with power, with finesse, make people miss. When you get him in space, that's really where the magic happens. And, he can hit a ton of singles or foul the ball off or, not have any great at-bats. And then all of a sudden, that home run is just sitting there. Again, like you said, I never would have imagined he'd have two long bombs in this game against the Rams after what he did to him the first time. But sometimes the great players can just sort of will their way into the end zone in those situations.
Oh, the season that was supposed to be for the Detroit Lions, who dropped 3 spots into that fifth position. I once again thought the Ravens were the best team in the NFL, best roster.
I say give Houston a little bit more respect for how they played. Put them at 7 or put the Rams at 8. But I guess it really don't kind of matter with the first 4 out.
They lose. They drop 2 spots to 6. You got the Rams at 7 and the Houston Texans at 8. All right, Eric, when it comes to the Lions, this was a team that I think, candidly, a lot of people thought were going to be pretty good this year. They've been sort of like the darlings of the NFL. Yeah. Now, all of a sudden, they're going to have the same situation happen to them that the Eagles did a few years ago. Only difference was that Philly team got to the Super Bowl. They're likely going to lose their coordinators here, right? I mean, Ben Johnson, we already talked about him. A lot of reports accepting that job with the Chicago Bears. How difficult will it be for them to get back to this point and then get over the hump, play for a championship, then play for a Super Bowl?
Yeah, you make an excellent point drawing the comparison to the Eagles a couple years ago when they had a monster of a team and then they nearly took down the Chiefs in the Super Bowl and then had to replace both their talented coordinators getting head coaching jobs. So that very well could be the case. Obviously, Ben Johnson going in the division, having all the house secrets and having Caleb Williams. We'll see what can happen there. But the core of this Lions team is expected to be back, including a lot of those defensive players. Aiden Hutchinson, the guys in the secondary, other members of the defensive front, they're all coming back. Players like Jameson Williams still should be very much in the peak of their career. Jahmyr Gibbs, Sam Laporta, et cetera. So the parts are still there. But as we know, the wrong coordinator hire, hiring somebody or elevating that position prematurely or not having a big vision for what they want to do, not having their own identity, trying to be too much like the last guy. There are so many trap doors for these coaches who get elevated into these positions that, it can obviously erase an entire season. So like you said, there's no guarantee that this Lions team, healthy in the offseason, maybe even adding some pieces, is going to be back at the same place. So Dan Campbell has said it the last couple of years when they've lost in the playoffs. We're probably never going to live this down, and you don't know how big these opportunities are until they're gone. So, I know I'm paraphrasing there, but I think Campbell kind of touched on something the Lions fans feel, which is, I'd like to think we're going to be here for a while, but you never actually know how it's going to play out.
I heard some of his comments after the game at the podium. Dude was devastated. You could hear it in his voice, see it in his face. Coordinators aside, I'll say this. Aiden Hutchinson, before the injury, could have made an argument, was on pace to be the defensive player of the year. I don't know what he is coming off the injury next season, but if there's one focal point roster-wise this offseason, Eric, what do you think helps this team?
I think adding, obviously, as a reaction to what happened this year where they just had waves of injuries on defense and have...
That's why, he probably going to go where I'm about to go. Add depth. Get more defensive depth to where an injury or two is not going to cause us to question your Super Bowl ability.
I think just another layer of depth. Plus, all those other guys who didn't play a lot this year, like Ennis Rakestraw, going to have another year of experience. So I think just sort of adding and bolstering each layer of the defense. Guys like Alex Anzalone are terrific players, but they've been injured a lot of their careers. So, those are the kind of guys, even with Derek Barnes and whatnot coming back, you still have to buttress that with some depth. And then offensively, too, O-line depth, adding more receiving threats and deciding whether you have Hendon Hooker as your quarterback of the future. Obviously, we saw Teddy Bridgewater come into the game when Goff left the playoff game against the Commanders. So, does Hooker still track towards being Goff's successor one day, or at least his backup? Those are questions that Brad Holmes and his staff have to answer.
Okay. I guess we'll start with that same question then for the Baltimore Ravens, because God, I feel like I'm beating a dead horse. I really did think they had the best roster in the NFL. So dominant. Sure. Thought they would get back to a championship game. We were going to be looking at them and Kansas City. And I thought because of Derrick Henry, they'd get over the top here. This roster was terrific. They were dominant. They figured out their defensive issues. Turnovers, obviously, a huge issue in this loss. But what's plan A now in this offseason for this team?
Don't lose nothing and work on turnovers. I really don't know what else I would add to them. Maybe a true number one, but when we really think about it, do teams even really have those true number one? Like, it's very rare that teams have those number ones. Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, Amon-Ra St. Brown. Who else really has a dominant number one? The Rams just have two. Most teams have like two really good players. Like even the Eagles, AJ and Devontae Smith. Like, very rare teams have that true dominant number one. And so I can't even really say, like, it's a rarity to have now. It's almost like having like a dominant running back at this point. Like, most people have receiving cores. Now, of course, you can have a receiving core with a dominant number one, or have a tag team partner in these cases, Jordan Addison, T. Higgins. But having a true dominant number one is going to go out and get you 1,500, at 100 receptions. That go-to guy, it's going to go off 13 out of the 17 games. You know what I'm saying? Like, that type of caliber player.
Good question, right? Especially after sort of going away from Derrick Henry in the fourth quarter, only those two back-to-back carries, they came up short on the first down there. I thought they might go to him a little bit more. Is he still going to have the same sort of workload next year that he did this year? Or do they want to help him out? Obviously, Justice Hill's still there. They like some of their other young backs they're developing too. But I would have to imagine offensive line. Ronnie Stanley's a free agent. Patrick McCarry, other guys that could have options. Build around Linderbaum and that center and try to go outward and find some tackle solutions on defense. Get more edge pressure. Obviously keep adding to the secondary as well. So yeah, I would say more depth on both trenches has to be an issue. And Justin Tucker was not a problem down the stretch, but during the year there were stretches when he was not the Justin Tucker we've come to know. So may there be a kicking competition too. I wouldn't be shocked if they brought another leg, a young guy, and see if that's going to be a problem next year or not.
Damn, man, they were right there. Had an opportunity. I thought coming off that late Saquon touchdown, it's a wrap, game over, and they still have a chance in the snow. And now all of a sudden I look to next season, there's questions about Matthew Stafford. I remember being around this team in August, to get a new quarterback. And Stafford's contract was an issue. They worked it out. He was in camp and was all well and good. This team is too good in terms of a young roster not to bring him back and figure that out, right?
Yeah, but a couple years ago, we were talking about maybe Sean McVay retiring, Aaron Donald retiring a year before he ended up hanging up the cleats. So, I'm not saying that Stafford's sort of milking the moment or, anything like that. I think he probably needs a little reflection, but his comments after the game seem to suggest he had some football left in him. And I think the Rams, certainly would accommodate him being back and the trigger man in this offense that at times looked very, very good. Turn on the Buffalo tape, you can see them at their very best, I think. But, those 2 fourth quarter turnovers were obviously killers. And, Kyron Williams, so reliable this season as both a runner, receiver, pass protector for that matter. Putting one on the turf, you could see his look on his face. Same thing with Stafford after his. So, those were big plays. I mean, the safety helped kind of change momentum a little bit and get him back in the game. And that pass rush was ferocious in both playoff games. But so there's a lot to like about him. I think adding to that secondary is going to be a key offseason priority and finding run stuffers. You can't let guys like Saquon Barkley continue to gash you over and over because the best teams, I think, are starting to realize the run game is cycling back into the NFL for a reason against these lighter fronts and these nickel packages. So that's got to be something that Chris Shule and the Rams have to figure out this offseason. But the Stafford question, obviously, is the one that hangs over everything.
Yeah, and that team, by the way, has done a tremendous job the last 2 years in the draft. You look at their first and second players and the massive contributions that they're making. So I think if you're a Rams fan, you get Stafford back, you feel good about the draft. You'll find some gems because there's now a track record of doing so. And you got to feel cautiously optimistic that this team could be right back in the mix this upcoming season. The Houston Texans, speaking of the draft, 2 years ago, you're going, really? Like, this is a squad that now heading into this current season that we're in, you felt like could make a run to a Super Bowl. I mean, that's what the hype was around C.J. Stroud. And they didn't play great football during the course of the year. I thought they played well late, especially from what we've seen in this postseason. Yeah. Like, what is this team? Like, are they the team that next year, bringing back most of the roster, you feel good about, can get back to this point and maybe learn something from some of these tough losses? Or there's got to be some changes in terms of personnel, and maybe it's a depth question that will potentially carry them and put them over the top.
Get them a running back and probably help out the defense and offensive line. And I think they're straight. I think that the AFC South is still theirs unless Anthony Richardson figures it out with Indianapolis. But outside of that, I don't think the Jaguars are kind of going right now. I mean, is Trevor Lawrence the guy or not? We're going to question that for a little bit. And then Tennessee's rebuilding. So it's going to be between them and the Colts. If Anthony Richardson can't figure it out, I don't see why C.J. Stroud's not going to run this division for another 2-3 years.
Yeah, I think it's a fair question. I mean, they were, like you said, they were levied with such big expectations after, their playoff run and their season last year. And I think we may have kind of over-graduated them early in the year. I was a little hesitant. I did bump them up into my top 5 early in the season, mostly because there wasn't real much clarity up top. So I think I also kind of pushed them ahead of where they deserve to be this year. But you're right, too. They did seem to kind of turn the corner there when I don't know if all hope was lost, but externally, a lot of people had their doubts about this team. But D'Amico Ryans has done a great job. C.J. Stroud went through his share of struggles. I was tough on him. Other people were too. Bobby Slowick, heard plenty from the radio guys and whatnot. But I think by the end of the season, you at least saw the arrow pointing back upward, and they played as well as they probably could have. Missed kicks and a few other penalties aside, but. Yeah, I'd like to obviously see them find some solutions at receiver. Nico Collins is great. John Mechie might be a nice complementary part, but one more guy, and I'm not sure it's Stephon Diggs with him heading to free agency, but for years.
Dale
We've been talking about
too.
the offensive line. That unit has to come together a little bit better defensively. Still, I think a few pieces short of being that top 10 unit, or at least the borderline top 10 unit that you probably need to take that extra step. So there's still a lot of promising developments. I'm not giving up on Stroud, and I think the future is mostly bright for them, even while admitting that they still have room to improve, no doubt about it.
Yeah, look, this is a Houston squad, once again, that figured out a way to flip a switch, I thought, late. That concerns me. I like the teams that are just killers no matter what the situation. And okay. Maybe I just point, fair maybe enough. The answer is as simple as, hey, they were banged up, had some significant injuries during the year, and maybe it solves itself. But can't wait to see what this offense looks like next season as well, because I do think a lot of us, and it's probably too early to get your top 10 for next year, but I got to imagine, as the offseason shakes out, you're still probably going to have them sitting pretty close to that 8th position, which is where they are right now. Eric, you're the best man. Always good to work with you. Next week, a special edition of NFL Power Rankings. It's a road show.
Okay.
Kind of. Both of us will both be on the roads. East-West Shrine Bowl, Senior Bowl for you. We will do the show, take you through championship weekend, get complete reaction, and preview the Super Bowl. Looking forward to it.
Hey, that's great. So we already got it confirmed. There will be. I wasn't sure if it'd be next weekend or if it'd be right before the Super Bowl. With obviously the Pro Bowl and all that stuff coming up. So I guess right after the games does make a little more sense. I don't know what they're gonna be doing at the Pro Bowl weekend, but like I said, it's all coming down to all season things are tricky. What quarterbacks are going to be long term, what quarterback's going to get it done, how many rings they're going to end up with. This is the time of the year where all that kind of shrinks by the second, and we're finally down to our final 4. And is the rookie going to do it? Is Jalen going to get another one? Is Patrick Mahomes going to three-peat? Or will Josh Allen finally squash the choking in the postseason storyline? One of those 4 things is going to happen. I guess the more interesting one for the Eagles would be Saquon getting them one. Finally after leaving the Giants. That would probably be the more storyline. But let me know what storyline you guys are rocking with. I'm honestly team rookie winning the Super Bowl. Jaden, go get that thing, bro. I'm rooting for you over here. I'm not going to put money on you yet. But that's my favorite right now to go get that thing is the Commanders throwing and taking it all. So let me know down below who you guys' favorite is. But also let me know who you would put your money on, though. Favorites is more like an opinion. Money on is like more factual. So who you want to go, who you think going to go. I think the winner of it all will be KC. I want Commanders, though. So, let me know down below what you guys are feeling as well. Swing your boy Sean, to Smooth, Black Avatar, King Leo. And I'll catch you guys in the next video, man. I am gone for the day. Peace.